Howdy everybody, and welcome back to the Legacy of the Wizard aRPG tutorial. So I'm kind of redubbing this because I did the entire episode and I completely forgot to turn on my microphone when I was doing it because it comes unplugged sometimes, and just enough so that I think it's on because the red on light is on, but not enough for the sound to actually get recorded by the computer because the USB cord is just barely in there, but not enough. So anyways, I'm just going to redub this episode, and I'd redo the entire thing, but I already got the code in there, and I don't want to have to try and figure out what code in the world what code is new and what code was old, because that's kind of hard to deal with. So anyways, let's get cracking on this here. First off, we're going to start by setting our squidlet enemy's parent to the parent monster. This will let us be able to determine any enemy that might be a monster if we were to add multiple enemies later on. Now, you may remember last time that I was having some issues with the parent monster. Well, if you remember, go back to the previous episode where I showed you how to fix those problems, and you'll be able to fix the parent monster problem yourself there as well with the same method. Anyways, add a collision with our object magic shot because we're going to be killing this monster now. If not iframes and I'm hatched, so if the monster is not showing iframes and is hatched, then life minus minus iframes is equal to true, alarm 0 is sec times 0.5, and that is my iframe alarm. So once it's done, we turn iframes to off so that the monster can be hit again, and then we play an enemy hit sound and set our life, check if our life is still greater than 0. And we only want to make a sound when, so multiple enemies will produce one sound, and that's kind of my preference option there. And if life is less than or equal to 0, then play the I've been killed sound. And next frame, it will start the killing the monster events. So let's add those in as well. And if you see awkward pauses, that's because, like I said, I'm redubbing this and I don't know exactly where I left. I'm not saying everything exactly the same way. So detects if my life is less than or equal to 0. Now, see, I do this in the step event after the collision with the magic shot, and that gives a 1 frame difference between when the monster is killed and when he actually dies. So that might not be the best option. If life's less than 0, then if I'm not dead, dead is now true, sprite index is the dead, and image underscore index is 0, y under speed underscore is equal to -4, because the monster sort of jumps up and then dies. And Windows keeps asking me to turn off my color scheme because it hates OBS. Anyways, and then y underscore speed, approach y underscore speed to 5. We set it to 4, so you kind of jump up and then you fall down. So y plus equal y underscore speed. And that should, and at this point you would actually cause your monster to spawn a new item for the player to pick up if we were adding spawn items into the game, but I'm not. So, but what we need to do is get rid of the monster once he falls out of the screen. And like I said, here is where you would spawn in a item if you were spawning in items for the player. And there's me hanging around my mouse and doing stuff that I don't remember what I was talking about at that point. Copy and paste some code over here. So what we want to do is add in our code for making the monster flash when he is hit. And this code is going to be used in the player as well, except it'll be used in a script up there, and it'll have a few options and stuff. But I kind of made it. I just copied and pasted the code into here because I didn't want to be worrying about it right here. So if alarm 0 mod 3 is less than or equal to 3 divided by 2, then alarm 0 is greater, and alarm 0 is greater than 0. So then draw my sprite plus 1, because the monster kind of shimmies when he takes damage rather than flashing. So this causes it to shimmy back and forth every couple of frames. That's what this code here is doing. Else draw myself as normal, and if alarm 0 is equal to -1, then draw myself as normal. -1, remember, is alarm code for I'm not doing anything at all right now. So here we just add a couple of monsters to the room so that we can have some to attack. And I believe there's going to be a small error coming up right here, or sometime in the future. But we'll just run through this real quick, test it out. Oh yeah, wanted to test the crystal ball, because remember, we put in the code for the crystal ball, but I hadn't actually tested it. So we'll put that in there to test it out. And actually, I think I'm wrong about that error. But we'll find out. So as you can see, the monsters do the little shimmy thing when you hit them. And pause, use the crystal ball. There we go. We teleport back to the overworld like we should when we use the crystal ball. So yeah, that's everything with the monsters, I believe. But now that we've taken care of the monsters, we need to take care of the player as well. Because the player is going to be taking damage too, not just monsters. So let me just make sure that everything's good on that end. And let's pull up in the player here. Checking out my code. Set up an iframe alarm for the player. Again, iframes equals false when we reach 0. And make sure we have our iframes stated in the create event, which we should. And let's add another alarm here. We need a death timer, and this will govern the death effects. So when you die, you kind of spin around and do some other stuff. So using this death timer will handle all that stuff. We also need a draw event where we will again draw the blinking effect when we take damage. So if alarm 0 does not equal -1, then draw self flash 6 alarm 0. Draw self flash is the same code that's in the monster, except with the option for adding your own custom variables. So, and this causes you to just blink out of existence because you're not drawing. You're only drawing when the interval is reached. And then draw ourselves as normal whenever the alarm 0 does not, whenever it does equal -1, because we don't want to not draw ourselves when we're walking around. That's always a fun annoyance. So yeah, add ourselves parrot monster collision, because we're going to need to be taking damage from the monster whenever we hit him. So if not iframes and other dot hatched and other dot dead, not dead, and state does not equal player state.death, we don't want to be taking damage while we're dead. That's kind of silly if we did. But if we match all of these conditions, then we want to go over and start executing our damage code. So with our object stats.life, we need to subtract the other dot damage. So other being the monster, in this case, parent monster. And remember, we added a damage variable with a value of 1 to the squidlet. So iframes equals true. Again, alarm 0 equals sec times 0.75. That's just the value I came up with. That seemed to match the game. Play a sound underscore player underscore hit. And again, it's trying to do it again. And I decided at this point, just press the keep because pressing X seemed to not work. And then we need check for death. And I made a script for doing this because there's a couple places that we're actually going to check for death. First here, after we take damage from a monster. But in a bit, we're going to add in a fall state as well. So if you take fall damage, you would check for death as well to make sure that you haven't died from the fall damage. So just in check for death, we basically check if object stats of life is less than or equal to 0, alarm 1. Then we set our alarm 1 to sec times 5, set our state to death, set our direction facing to right underscore down because we're going to use that direction as our sprite holding a placeholder for the when a player is dead sprite. Set our image index equal to 0 because there's 2 frames in that sprite. And image speed equal to 0 because we are going to be handling the animation manually. Object state, we don't want to be able to input. And stop all the music because we don't play any music other than the death song. It's kind of supposed to be an abrupt stop when that happens to give you the full weight of you just got killed. So anyways, we're going to add in a couple of user events here. We're going to add in our user event, I believe this is 4, and that will be for our fall damage. And we will also add in user state 5, which is for our death state. And our death state will actually be fairly simple because we can't move from the death state to any other state. So we get to cut out all that state logic that we were using. So over here I was just adding a little bit more health and life and magic to my character because it was kind of annoying being able to only shoot once and being killed in one hit. I can't demonstrate the iframe effect very well with only one hit. Anyways, back to the death state. We going to fill in some code here, copy paste. Give me a second here to pull it on over. And like I said, we don't have to worry about all the logic because we don't really do very much in here. We don't have to worry about movement and everything. So we just set if alarm 1 is less than or equal to sec times 4. So there's supposed to be like a 1 second gap where you just sort of stand there in a T-pose. And then if not death stuff done, then we want to set up our next song. And I'm actually going to buff up the way the music manager works next project. So stay tuned for that, for some improvements to how that handles music. Then we set our death stuff equal to true so that we don't try to play the song again. Then I set up some little mod thing so that every couple quarter seconds it'll change the direction the player is facing, so it kind of looks like you're spinning around in a death feint. And once all that is done, then we finally fall over and transition to the death room. So if alarm 1 is equal to -1, if everything's done, then direction underscore facing is equal to dir8.write down, which is, like I said, our death sprite again. And here we add in our sprite lookup table for the death state because we don't want to be crashing from that like I usually do. In fact, I forget to put in the sprites for the fall state. So we will be crashing up ahead because, well, that's the way the cookie crumbles, I guess. So yeah, like I was saying, sprite underscore player underscore death is the right underscore down, and the rest of them don't really matter. And well, they do matter, but it's just going to be standard movement stuff. So image index is equal to 1 because that's the falling down. Then image speed equal to 0. Make sure we're not animating. I didn't really need that there. And then set up a transition. So previous underscore x 0, previous y 0, room, previous room is equal to room, just like when we're transitioning when we're going back into the cabin, because we are pretty much just going back into the cabin. Then fade underscore transition, transmode dot go to death domain, because that's our death room. So let's look at our death domain. Death domain just has a background, an asset that I put up there right now. That's the benefit of our modern stuff, is that I can just cut the sprites and use them as directly as backgrounds rather than having to actually display the text via code and whatnot. So let's add. I also add in the fall damage state here as well. So we set our image speed equal to 0 and image underscore index equal to 1 when we are in the fall damage state. And then if y speed is greater than or equal to 4, set ourselves back to the movement state. That means just a little bit after we reach the peak of our bounce back, because we bounce when we hit and we get into fall damage. At the peak, just a little bit beyond that, we return back to normal. But beyond that, x speed is equal to 0 because we don't want any left or right movement when we're in fall damage state. And everything else is the same as normal, just to move with collisions and gravity. And clamp us to the room. We don't want to be bouncing out of the room. That wouldn't be good. Back over here in the collision code, actually, there is a little bit of collision code that you want to set up there. So when y underscore speed underscore is greater than negative jump speed, so if we're falling faster than our jump speed, then we go into the fall state. And our life is subtracted, play a fall damage sound, and check for death. That's where we use that script again. And y underscore speed underscore is equal to the max of -6, negative y speed times 0.75. So either -6 or our y speed times 0.75. And then we just set our y speed equal to, if under normal circumstances, we'll just land like normal. I'm going to be making a video soon about collisions again that will finally put this bugaboo of mine to bed by building up collision code from first principles with you so that you can see how in the world I actually do it all. And hopefully I'll be able to explain it a little bit better when I do it that way. Anyways, let's make a death object. Give it a sprite of grandma, because grandma is death. And I don't know if that's supposed to mean anything, but that's the way it is. Set our image scale, X scale equal to -1 because grandma is flipped in the death room. And our selection is equal to 0 because we're going to be using the selection code that we've previously used. And instance destroy object stat bar because we don't want the stat bar to be existing while we are in the death room. And let's add some step code in here as well. Let me copy and paste some stuff here for that. There we go. So just like I said, same as all the other selection code. If sound tick, if we press right, then go up, wrap between 0 and 1. If left, go down, left, wrap between 0 and 1. And if any of our input buttons are pressed, then go back to the inside of the house. And if we had a save system, one of these options would be where we would, well, actually, we don't really have to do anything. What we would actually do is clear our save file when we go back into the house if we were using a save system, because we would just retain all of our information when we go back to the house if we selected continue. Anyways, so yeah, just go back into the house, and our input should be back to normal, and everything should be working exactly the same way it always did. So let's see. What am I going to do next here? I don't remember. Oh, yeah. Put death object into the room. It wouldn't be good to not have it in there. That certainly wouldn't be good. Oh, yeah. I'm going to test it, and I'm going to crash the game because I forgot to put in the stuff for the... Oh, well, actually, there's another little bit right here. In the draw, I need to do a selection is equal to 0, then draw my sprite at this location, otherwise draw my sprite at this location, because you need to be drawing the sprite in the right place. Yeah, I'm about to crash the game because I forgot to put in the fall state damage sprites. So, here we go. So as you can see, if you're at the top of the house, you'll be just barely under fall speed when you hit the ground. But if you do any sort of jumping, and if you had the ability to do selective height jumping, I would be able to show you that just any amount would cause you to die at that point. So here, just copy and paste in those fall state sprites. So just remember to pause if you need to check out the code there. It should just be jump as normal, and we use the second frame 1, as our fall damage frame. So anyways, back into the game. And this time, we should go into the death state properly. So, oh wait, yeah, that's right. We have a bunch of health first. So, take fall damage, we lose 1 health. We sort of bounce around a little bit. Let's go check out what happens when we touch the monsters. See, our player does that little blinky blink like we want him to. And as you can see, we can actually walk on the top of monsters, which is a feature. Well, not just on the top. We can actually walk at any sort of level in the monster as long as we hit them, because when we are touching the monsters, gravity stops applying. So they kind of work as a platform. Anyways, retry, and we're back to the house. So that's it pretty much, and we are almost done with everything in this series. There's just barely anything left to go over. We have 1 or 2 lessons left. So let me think about it. What in the world was next? I can't remember what was next off the top of my head, considering I'm going to record it in like 2 minutes from now. So, oh well, I'll figure it out once I actually take a look at it. I'll take a look at my project map, and then I'll be able to tell where in the world I